So she knew me before dystonia. She knew me during dystonia, and she's seen me once or twice since I got better in April of last year, but hadn't seen me for several months. And she was talking with another lady that was there to teach a class following my class. And I heard her, because I'm busy teaching, but I heard her say it's a miracle. You would not believe.
Paul and Rena, how did you find carnivore?
Well, we found carnivore basically on the internet. We were both overweight and had physical problems, and the doctors just seemed to want to put you on a regimen that maintains your situation and helps you cope with it. I don't know. We started to explore it a little bit, thinking, well, let's try this for weight loss, and maybe both of us will feel better. So we started in January of 2024, and then within 3 to 4 months, we saw just dramatic results, and had our first interview with you, and that was viewed by an awful lot of people that commented positively. So we wanted to do this follow up to kind of take you back, set the stage again. Rena has general dystonia, which is a neurological problem where the muscles and brain are not communicating well together. And so she would begin to have a bobble on her head, kind of a nodding up and down. And then that would get worse and worse until her chin would be down to the left and her head locked in one position, and her back in kind of a crescent shape, unable to really sit up straight and be comfortable. And when this started around late May in 2017, the symptoms started to be very, very bad then. We didn't know what it was. Began to, really be on a search as to what was going on with her. And I was very much afraid of maybe this is how I lose her. And then what do? I don't want to be alone. So all these thoughts were on my mind. And of course, it was the big question. We went on and found that it was dystonia and that there was a treatment and things like that. But all that time, we were just eating the standard American diet, eating what we wanted. In fact, I had kind of a philosophy. I decided for a long time I didn't want to eat to be stuffed. I just wanted to eat for flavor, and I think a lot of people may go through that. Like that's why they switched to all fruits or something, or some other way of eating for a while. But I ate what I wanted. I binged on when I wanted to binge on something. I loved the chocolate and the popcorn and the Cheetos and the Pepsi and things like that. Our natural pattern, I never really thought that the way we ate was contributing to what I just chalked up to old age and arthritis and things. There's an old rhyme that said, I can see with my bifocals, my dentures fit just fine. I can live with my arthritis, but I sure do miss my mind. So we just thought, it's typical growing old, when we started on the carnivore, we both began to see some tremendous changes. In our first interview with you at the time, it was April of last year, and I was down 32 pounds already since January 1st. And I ended up losing another 20 pounds or so. So I got all the way down to 168 pounds from 220, 224 at the start. So, and Rena had lost 45 pounds, I think, in that range. So it's interesting because I just had a colonoscopy done, and in 2 previous colonoscopies, they removed polyps, and this time I was clear. But when I saw the doctor before the procedure, I shook his hand. He didn't recognize me because I was 50 pounds lighter. He didn't know I was the same person. Mm-hmm. And we've had such a reaction from people that say, what a change. Rena wasn't walking well. The dystonia problems were so pronounced. And I'm sure people must have thought, oh, what a shame. Look at the shape she's in, and then months later, people would say, what has changed? And we would talk about the carnivore diet with people. I even got to the point where I made up a little card, that they would direct them to Dr. Ken Berry's site on YouTube. So look at his videos and learn about this. I find it fascinating over this past year since we last talked with you, the things that we've learned, just listening to the Q&A sessions that these doctors do, and learning about other people's issues and things that carnivore or keto eating has really resolved for them. I find now I'm asking fewer questions, but I'm learning so much just by listening to other people's stories. So when Rena was first improving last year at this time, she went for that walk that we shared the video of in our last interview, and her gait was good, her steps were strong. She didn't have the issues with walking. She was no longer dependent on the walker or the cane. Hasn't used them all this past year. They're in storage basically. We just don't need them.
Now it's going.
You can turn it on any time. You gonna run?
Yeah, I ran. I said I can even run.
That's fantastic. And so, Rena, from your side, like this started in 2017. Like once you got to the point where you were about to start carnivore, I mean, that had been a really long time. It must have been something that was quite dispiriting, or like feeling like, well, I'm just stuck with this, right?
You know, when you live with something for 7.5 years, that's the way life is. My brother has this also and has had it for 10 years longer than I've had it. So once I was diagnosed and realized it was the same thing, because we do look a little bit different with the dystonia, I just settled in. This is my life. It's what I need to do, you know, and you learn to function within your abilities. And be content. My personality is to be content there. So what could I do to change it? So, and when we went to carnivore, it wasn't in any part of my thought process that would help dystonia. I just thought it would help with some weight loss. And when you're not moving a lot, weight loss is harder to do anyway. The older you get, it is. When we did keto back in 2009, I lost 50 pounds in 3 months. It just went away. But when you go away from eating that style and go back to the typical American diet, then you gain it. And of course, with age and menopause and stuff, you gain weight, or at least I did. I mean, I do know some people that are blessed that don't or have not. So that was my thought, just the weight loss. I had no idea that it would help the dystonia. And so when we had our interview last time, I was really on a high, because I went from not being able to walk without assistance to just realizing one day, I don't need this cane. It slows me up to walk the pace of a cane. I can put that away and just go. There was a lot of joy there, because it's just so much. We've made a lot of plans for this year for things that we're going to do that we might not have planned if I didn't have the ability to move and do what we're going to be doing. So it's added a positive to our life, that there's things that we can do that when your mobility is less, it's harder to do.
Yeah, we bought a teardrop camper in 2019, and she was thinking about a camper you might have to step up into. And I kept thinking a teardrop, because they're low to the ground, and all she would have to do is sit in the doorway and then lean back and pull her legs in, and there's no up and down steps, and we ended up with the teardrop. But I always had this concern, if we go to a park or something, the things you do, like hiking the trails or going to the beach there or whatever, she might not enjoy doing any of that. And so that was always a concern. And of course, with the change in our dieting and her improvements, she can enjoy so much more of that. We did like 7 or 8 camping trips last summer. We even went as far as Colorado and Utah from our home in the Midwest. So we got to see family and travel extensively last year. We'll do more this year. Planning a cruise at Alaska this year, coming up and things that we're going to be doing because she can enjoy it. And I was so afraid that, she would never be able to do these things.
Well, and even with that little camper last year, before the change with the diet, it worked for me because I could just sit in there, and if I could not get my legs up into the door to lay back, he could lift my legs up and put them in. But once this improved, it was like that first number of times that we camped, it's like, wow, look, I can lift my own legs. I can do things with my own legs that I could not do before. So yeah, there's a great joy in being able to move. And it's been kind of fun to see the doctors, because past our last visit, I saw the younger neurologist who did say, I do believe you're right. Your diet probably does make a big difference. So being the younger neurologist, he was willing to recognize that. And he said, honestly, your gait is now perfect. I don't even think you'll even want to see me next year. We'll put you on the, on the thing for next year, but I'll bet you'll cancel it. And absolutely I will. I don't feel any need to see him. So then I saw my regular family doctor, and we did all of the typical basic metabolic panel and all of that. And my kidney function went from 3rd degree damage to absolute normal. And he was, wow, yeah. I told him, he took my blood pressure as they normally do, the nurse does. And he goes, no, your blood pressure is really good. And, maybe we could bring you down your meds. And I said, well, I already brought myself down on the meds. He says, well, with this good, we might be able to take you off. And I said, I'm really glad you said that, because I did that 3 weeks ago. Because my daughter's a nurse practitioner, and she had been telling me, Mom, you don't need that meds. You just don't need the meds. So it was nice to have him recognize that. And he did tell me, I also said I'm off the acid reflux medication. I've been on that 38 plus years. And he says, I don't have a test that proves this, but I really believe this medication causes problems with kidney function. So it's a good thing that you're off of it. And he did give me some hints as if I would have acid reflux, what I might need to do. So he saw that. My cholesterol was up a little bit, which we talked about last time, and you expected it, and I expected it from everything we've heard on carnivore. But he already knows, because my cholesterol's already been high, that I wouldn't do a statin. Because we tried a statin, and that's when Paul got to see what a statin does to a person. It totally locked me up.
She didn't function.
I couldn't move. I saw the older neurologist when I was in that state, and he told me, he says, I think we have you diagnosed wrong. I think you have stiff man's disease, because I could hardly move my muscles. But I got to thinking after that appointment with him. He said, I'm going to call you for the next so many days, and we're going to check up on you and see, because this is bad. This is really, really bad. And during that, as soon as I left his office, I got to thinking about how they doubled the medication. And so I quit taking that medication. Within 3 days, I could move again. So then we didn't pursue it with a neurologist. It told me statins are bad. So my family doctor already knew I was not going to take a statin drug. And that's before I got knowledgeable from Barry about how bad statin drugs are. But what he said to me is, listen, you're now moving, and you guys are walking up to 7 miles a day, whereas you were just sitting before. That causes things to go up. You are now doing so many things that are so positive. I'm not even going to worry about that number right now. We'll talk about it next year if we absolutely have to. But he says, I think maybe some of this has helped you. So I thought that was a very good report from him, a very, that he was willing to learn too, that maybe the diet does make a difference. Of course, he says to me, here, I got to give you something, because that's kind of what you have to do with. So he says, here's a diet about non-inflammatory diet. He goes, but I kind of think you already know about this. And of course, the document he gave me contradicted itself, because in this part it said one thing, and the last part it said the other part. So I agreed with half of it. The other half I did not agree with. But I thought that was funny. He says, I got to give you something, because we've just taken you off all your medications, and everything is so positive, but I'm supposed to give you something. So here's a diet.
Yeah, that's in some ways it's like, the cashier at McDonald's who, no matter what you order, they've got to upsell you somehow. They've
Yeah.
got to, would you like large fries with that? Or, Um, so this is amazing when you think about it. So like basically 2017 to beginning of 2024, you're locked up all the time. You're head bobbing, can't walk a distance without a walker, that kind of thing.
And the
And
only
now,
relief was those deep injections in her neck. The only relief were those deep injections that caused her such pain.
Well, it would stop the bobbing, and it would see, because I would lock and curl and I couldn't move other than to bob. So that's taken away. But the other thing was trembling. That was the first thing I noticed gone. I didn't, if I'd sit down in my chair, I didn't, my arms and my legs didn't tremble. So the essential trembles went away immediately.
so that's like a Parkinson's kind of thing,
It is. That's
almost.
why the first medicine they put me on was a Parkinson's disease, and then Mayo Clinic, which is a bigger hospital. I was sent there at one point, and they took me off it immediately because they said that's hurting your memory rather than helping you. Obviously, you don't have a Parkinson's, dystonia related to Parkinson's. Um, Dystonia is a big thing. There's a lot of causes. Mine's not medicated. They think mine's genetic because my brother has it, and they don't know enough about it to know exactly. But the trembling was nice, not to sit down and have your legs jumping in, or laying in bed and have you kicking everybody. All of that was gone.
Yeah, and last year when we talked with you, it had only been 2 days since I watched her walk without assistance for the first time. It had been 7 years of this problem, and so it was all so fresh and so immediate, the change, and we were so excited, you know. And now we're getting kind of used to the fact that she can walk where she wants.
Normal.
We'll take a 2 mile walk around our village or something, and it's nothing. She keeps up with me fine. When I'd walk with her before, when her symptoms were bad, she'd lock arms with me, and she was either pushing me to the left or tugging me to the right or something.
No control.
Yeah, and it was so nice to just be able to walk together.
But it's also nice. Like I said 2 weeks ago, I teach, and I have for 10 years, over 10 years. I teach a greeting card class where we make cards, and at the local library. And a lady that I've known for probably 6 years. So she knew me. No, I've known her longer than that. As long as we got here, she knew, we got to know her after we got here. So she knew me before dystonia. She knew me during dystonia, and she's seen me once or twice since I got better in April of last year, but hadn't seen me for several months. And she was talking with another lady that was there to teach a class following my class. And I heard her, because I'm busy teaching, but I heard her say it's a miracle. You would not believe the difference in how she looks. And see, it's so natural for me now. If I drop something, I bend over and pick it up. I couldn't do that before. And so I even have 2 or 3 in my class that keep saying that. Look at her. I can't believe she just bent down and picked that up. That has now become more natural for me. But my friends who have seen me walk through this are still like, wow, look at this. She actually picked something up off the floor.
So this is one thing that happened for me, and I have talked to other people that this has happened to. Like, you kind of have these improvements. Like, let's say, in my case, my arthritis went away.
Mhm.
And then over time, it becomes normal. So you kind of forget what it was like before. Is
Yeah.
that something that's happened to you? Have you got to the point where you kind of, I really don't remember what it was like?
In a certain extent, like when that friend said that, I went, oh yeah, I couldn't do that before. I couldn't do that for a long time. Now, the dystonia in April of last year, my brain totally, completely cleared up. Since then, I've had some of the stress come back. The younger neurologist told me, he said, it's not that your brain is being squeezed, it's that all of the muscles in your head are squeezing. some of that squeezing has come back. Not to the degree it was, but so it's still there a little bit. I still have some tightness in my neck occasionally, but I don't lock and not able to get out of that position. Even when he does the treatments, which were extremely painful because you've got a very hard muscle, and then he's taking a needle and trying to get in there. He bent a needle one time trying to do the shots. The needle actually bent. So that has gotten easier, so they're not as painful. I noticed that last time. It's like, okay, this doesn't feel as painful as it usually did, but he said that's because the muscles aren't as tight as they are. So I still sense it. I still know it's there. So it's not like it's completely gone, but I just take the walking as natural now, which, for a long time I didn't have. So that part is, I don't think twice about walking anywhere outside. I don't think twice about stepping or bending over and picking something off the floor. I don't think, oh, I got to be really careful how I do this, which I had to do if I tried to do it before. I climbed up on the tub the other day to clean the top of the tub. And my son was like, Mom, do you have a death wish? And I said, I don't always think about those things now because I can do them, which I couldn't do. And they remember better that I couldn't do that. So yes, there is some of that. My arthritis feelings are gone, except if I find I can't eat stevia. If I put stevia in anything, I inflame. So that's something he can have, but I cannot have.
Yeah, I'll put it in my Earl Grey tea just to make sure it's not a bitterness in the tea or something, but I really don't need it. I found that when we were very strict on the carnivore, I lost that sweet tooth.
Completely.
But when I started to give in, I'd like to have that chocolate bar again or something, then I find the cravings come back pretty quickly. And I think that because my weight stayed down, my belt size is like 3 sizes smaller now than it ever was. You kind of feel like, I can cheat a little bit. I know I'm cheating myself. I'm not really falling off the wagon, so to speak, but I'm going to indulge. But that really doesn't help. We were in Florida for 3 weeks in February this year, and I did a lot of driving, and I think it kind of pinched a nerve in my lower back. Well, I've been eating some banana bread I shouldn't have been eating, and things that, it was just so tempting, right? Well, that created inflammation, and I spent a miserable week and a half trying to get comfortable. A heating pad on my back at night to try and sleep, things like that. If I had just stayed strict on my diet, I probably could have avoided that. We happened to go to a yard sale where a guy had an inversion table for sale, and I asked if I could get on it because I knew it would bring some relief, and it did. But I couldn't wait to get home to my own inversion table and use it more extensively. And that finally relieved all the back pain, cleaning up the diet and getting that pinched nerve to relax. That's what I needed.
So last year we said we'd never go back, but then Christmas comes around and you give in a little bit here because you're in somebody else's home. You give in a little bit here and a little bit there, and that sweet tooth comes back. And I think that what helped me before is by watching Dr. Berry and the others, I found my reason. But I think if you stay away from that thought, thinking it just on that level for a while, and you're feeling good, you think, oh, it doesn't hurt to eat a little bit of this. And then it hits you. And so then it's like, okay, a little is just too much for me. I can't even do a little. And then we tried some stuff with stevia, and I found that was very detrimental. Probably the only time I had trouble walking again was in the summer. We were on our way to Colorado, and we had bought an iced tea, and it had stevia in it. And I had drank probably more than I should have, but it was very hot season. And then all of a sudden one night I realized I can't walk. So I did have trouble once not walking. And that's where I identified, okay, stevia is probably not a good thing for me. So as soon as I quit drinking anything with that, I seemed to improve. But then this last week, we had a fellowship dinner that I needed to take something to, and I made a cheesecake, and instead of putting sugar in it, I put stevia. and I ate that. And then I felt it right away. I felt the arthritis feeling in my thumb and in other places. So I thought, okay, physically, I can't do that. So it is a learning journey that nobody's can be perfect at.
This is one of the things that concerns me. And even as we listen to other carnivore and ketovore followers, why are we trying to imitate the sweet foods? Why are we trying to imitate the very filling kind of desserts and other things, but now in a carnivore or ketovore way? Why are we trying to do that? It's like we are keeping our taste buds, our sense of desire, focused on that, you know.
Well, I think we did that cheesecake more for the people we were taking it to, so
Yeah.
that people, because only 2 people signed up because they saw cheesecake, so people didn't sign up for desserts. So it's like, okay, I got to make it palatable for people that don't, that still use sugar.
And it was good. I ate too much of it.
Well, I won't make another one for a long time, but
you know, my problem was we had our why, our purpose, and kind of in place. But the longer we went feeling good, the more we thought, hey, we can put some of this back into our diet. We can try this. And Christmas came around, and now there's the traditional Christmas cake and other things that we always did. Well, let's do that again. It's Christmas after all, you know. And then I gained 10 pounds back, you know, pretty easily.
well, I gained 3.
Now, I continue to ride my recumbent trike around our village. We go for walks together. We'll do the camping. We'll take in the Alaskan cruise this summer. I've got my 50th class reunion coming up this summer. So it's hard to imagine 50 years since high school, you know. And I firmly believe I'm going to die on time, that God's got a time for me. I just want to live better until I get there to that moment, you know. So I don't subscribe to the idea that one can live longer or their life will be shorter because of this or that in our choices. I think that
Quality of life.
But a quality of life is the real issue. I don't want the arthritis. I worked in manufacturing before I retired from that, and my hands would be locked in the morning, and I'd have to work my fingers. You know, I couldn't snap my finger because I had pain down the thumbs, and all the doctor would say is, take ibuprofen, you know. And a month after our first interview with you, I actually saw my doctor, had my labs done. I was no longer considered obese. I had no longer any high blood pressure symptoms. I was no longer pre-diabetic. And, you know, the labs all looked so good and everything. And so he took me off all the prescriptions that I was on. The only thing that remains is an eye drop in my left eye for the, you know, staving off glaucoma, kind of preventative thing. And I don't know if you'd recall, but I had a injury to my right eye where I had bleeding in my eye, and that had lasted about a year. I'd had all these injections. Well, my recent visit with the ophthalmologist, he said, we don't need to do an injection. Your eye is finally stabilized. But I attribute that to the low carb diet, because with inflammation, you don't know where that is inside you, and it's inflammation going to be in your eye, or it'll be in your back, or it'll be in your hands. You know, it can be anywhere and all over, really. The other thing is the last 3 dental checkups, my dentist hasn't found anything she could drill anymore, you know. So like Dr. Berry says, if people don't eat carbs, they're going to have good teeth, you know. And I always thought, well, even as an adult, you end up with cavities, and you got to have these things done to your mouth all the time, you know. And nobody enjoys sitting in that chair for, you know.
Yeah, it's all these things, you know, we go through life thinking all these things are inevitable, and a lot of the time it's just down to diet, right? Like the cavities and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just chalk it up to old age. Well, we're getting to the point where we're like our grandparents. They had this problem and that problem, and now we should expect it, you know. And it's amazing to me the things that have healed internally that I'm not probably even aware of. You know, and then I would hear from other people too. They were experiencing the same thing, like very pleasant dreams at night, sleeping through the night without the need to get up and use the restroom, not being anxious in the morning when you first wake up. It's like I could linger here a moment longer, but you're waking up alert, no brain fog. You're feeling so much better. Um, a, a breakfast for me typically will be kind of a lightly scrambled egg, not cooked very hard, with some bacon bits, and maybe I'll put some cheese on it. And I'm never tired of eggs. And when I first started this, I thought, well, I'm going to get sick of eating hamburger and bacon and eggs and butter, you know. But no, you never really get tired of it.
When we first started, I could not eat eggs, and Dr. Berry said it's probably what do they call it? Autoimmune. And a lot of times, if you have an autoimmune, you can't handle the white of an egg. So he said, remove the white. So I did. And I was very cautious about even trying another egg because they made me deathly ill. So the first time I ate the yolk, I thought, oh, yeah, we'll see if this works. And I found I could eat eggs again. I don't really care for eggs. And I think it's just all those years of facing that didn't make me feel, they made my stomach upset. So I do eat some eggs, but we got to the point where we were just he'd eat eggs usually in the morning, but then we'd just do a meal, 4-ish or 5.
4 or 5 in the evening,
And then just primarily one meal a day, unless he did his, because I'm just not a breakfast eater. And I kind of stalled in the weight loss. I lost 45 pounds and then I stopped. And I still have weight to go. And I was told probably I was under eating, that I needed to eat more. So
more fat.
Yeah. Well, and more period. Because when I started to look at some of the videos of people, I thought, well, we eat one hamburger, maybe with some cheese and a pickle, and that's our meal. Or we eat a hamburger and maybe a piece of fish, but that's all you ate all day. That's not enough. So, but yet I couldn't eat any more than that. So I've started to try and force myself to eat an egg in the morning with maybe some side pork. We did have some friends stop by the other day with a whole bag of frozen ribeye, the fat.
It was the fat trimmings in chunks from the ribeye.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it's not likely to like that, but I fry it in the air fryer and eat the little chunks because they said I need more fat for my brain. So I've been trying to do that. And then, like I said, we were at a friend's 90th birthday, and their son is a functional doctor. And he said, I think you really need your hormones checked. So when I have my next appointment with Dr. Zach coming up, I'm going to have him check I'm going to hopefully, I know there's an age group where they don't like to do, they feel it's unnecessary to do hormonal checks, but I'm going to request that he check my hormones to see if that could be why I stalled out on any weight loss, even when we were eating pretty strict.
Yeah, and the only thing on my last labs in January that seemed a concern to my provider was calcium in the blood seemed a little high. But then I looked at the 2 previous labs, and it wasn't much higher than previously. It's just this is the first time the provider has said, oh, I'm a little concerned about that.
But this is the first time it's gone over the high limit. So that'll be something I have to check.
It was within a point, so it seemed like I traditionally might just run higher. And so to have the parathyroid checked is the next step,
But otherwise, our doctors are amazed at the.
Yeah, I talk it up. I mean, I'm in there for dental cleaning, and what am I doing? I'm telling the dental hygienist and the dentist about the carnivore diet, and look up Dr. Baker and Dr. Chafee and Dr. Berry, and then anybody in town, when they say, oh, it's amazing what you and your wife have gone through, that you look so different and everything, your face is thinner and all that, and so we talk up carnivore whenever we get the chance.
It's just over a year, and what's that? It's about 16 months. And you're doing so well. And, when you talk about that, Paul, when you talk about that, the calcium that they noticed on your blood test, it almost feels like, well, there's nothing else we can pick on, so we have to look at this.
That's kind of what I felt. Yeah.
Well, but I still would like you to take the next test just to make sure, because there's nothing big. It's easy to fix the parathyroid. He had severe COVID, and they were pushing oxygen into him, and I thought pushing all that oxygen in could have caused something in the throat that would cause a little bit of a blip that might need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes it's wise to pursue something just because, and if it turns out that isn't a problem, then you don't worry about it.
Yeah, in September of 2021, I came down with pneumonia due to COVID, and I was 18 days in a hospital, and they forced the air into me. They didn't have to incubate, so I didn't have
It
to.
was very close, though.
I was like one step away from that. At one point, they're giving me such a high volume of oxygen that it was hard to exhale because it's just like forced in, and that was the worst night of it. But then by the next day, they had reduced the oxygen flow considerably, and I was improving. But one strange thing while I was there in the hospital, and I can't account for it. Maybe a doctor one day could tell me why. But I was doing pretty well. They had me sit at the edge of the bed, and they were never allowing me to walk in the room or anything. But I could go from the bed to the chair, which was next to the bed. And when I stood up, suddenly everything in my vision just went white. I couldn't see even across the room. I mean, I knew where I was, and I pivoted and I sat down on the chair. But it took a few moments for me to regain that white fog-like sensation to go away. And then I could see the clock and the television on the opposite wall and things again. And then it didn't worry me. But there's been no explanation as to why that happened, what it was. I have no idea, and that was one of the only kind of scary things, because I thought, what if whatever I've got in this COVID experience would take my vision away, that'd be worse than passing away from it.
Real scary when things happen to your vision. That's really scary.
I guess it is one thing I hoped would also improve with and we're too early. I think that it's a journey and things can continue to heal. And so that's what your hope. But the dystonia still affects my vision quite a bit. So I still choose not to drive because although I can move my head completely, I don't feel that I can see things well enough that come at me. So I choose not to do that. But I'm still kind of hoping with time. And, I'm encouraged by doctors who say the brain takes longer to heal. So you just got to keep it up. You got to keep living a clean lifestyle. And pay attention to your body. Okay. So I had stevia and it affected me this way. Don't do it again. Black pepper is inflammatory to me. So you find out because you've done an elimination, you've eliminated things. And as you add them back out, if they affect you, you realize, okay, that's not worth the inflammation. It's not worth the stress on the body. So that's different for every individual.
Yeah. And a couple of our friends had seen such a change in us, folks that attend our church. And they both decided, they're brothers, and they both decided they should try this. But I think that they fell off after a while, went back to the way they've been eating. And I don't want to hound them and be, a thorn in their side, always pushing to, do what I'm doing. But for a while, they saw the change and they thought, well, this could really help us. And at first, when they're down 30 pounds or something, it's like, yeah, I feel great, But then I realized they weren't sticking to it, And we love them. They're great people, I wish the best for them. But if I could nudge them a little bit back to carnivore, I would, because that's the hardship, the heartache. You care about people, you care about your friends, you care about family members that you don't think are eating well. Please try what we're doing and really have the reason for why you're trying it.
The funny thing also with doing this fellowship dinner and doing that cheesecake, it reminded me how nice it is not to have all those dishes to do. Because when you eat carnivore, you're eating pretty clean. You don't have tons of dishes. It's kind of funny, but in reality, it did remind me, it's simple eating. It's easy to cook. There isn't a stack of dishes to wash.
But our kitchen closet and stuff, the pantry is still full of mixing bowls and things we don't use, and the toaster on the counter, and things like that. And it's like we have all this stuff, but we don't tend to use it anymore.
But there are some things like Chris Cooking Nashville, his website. He has some good recipes that I still would like to try, just because sometimes you need a little variety, but I need to learn how to cook those clean things occasionally, so that, like, he just came out with a recipe on a biscuit. And I said, I would love to try that, because maybe my younger son who's autistic, if I made some of those up, maybe he would eat cleaner with that, because that's, you can eat with the sausage and the cheese and the egg and the biscuit, you can make that comparable. And so I want to try that. So I can see a reason for not getting rid of all of that stuff. It's just making that cheesecake, a keto cheesecake, did remind me how the carnivore cooking is so much simpler and the way we.
Yeah.
Have you branched out to eating other than, or do you still just direct? Are you just carnivore?
I just go for the ground beef
Meat.
or the steak and the eggs and that kind of thing. Because over the years, having been on and off keto for more than 2 decades, I know one of the problems that I have, and that is, as soon as I get a feeling for something that's kind of, feels like the old way of eating, like I'm back to the old way of eating before you know it. So my personality is, I've either got to be completely one way or completely the other.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about trying to imitate the sweets and the breads and the things. Why would we want to do that? Because we're only training ourselves to desire it.
Yeah, that's right. So just if we could take a step back for 1 second. One thing I forgot to ask, Rena, was you mentioned your brother has dystonia, and he had it for 10 years longer than you.
Yes.
Has he have you spoken to him at all about eating this way?
I have, and the consensus came down that his medical officials do not recommend it, and so he follows their advice. We are actually going out to go on that Alaskan cruise. He lives in Washington State, so we will have the opportunity to see him this summer, or this in the fall. And all I can do is encourage, but it's hard when your medical professional says this isn't going to work. And his professional was partly right. I had a big boost to begin with, and it settled down, but it didn't take away my ability to move motor skill wise. Where his has now gone into his knees and stuff, and he has a terrible time moving. And so my hope was that maybe he would. And he eats pretty sensibly, but I would say it's more keto than I just would like him to have gone carnivore for a while, just to see if he could figure out what adds to the dystonia for him. But no, his doctor was not really in favor of it. So, and he's going to listen to him.
And, we tend to have a lot of compassion for people when we see what they're suffering and everything. But it's very sad when someone has just given up. They think, well, there is no hope for me. And we're on the side of, yes, there is always hope. You don't have to live with this and maintain a bad situation. You can find a way out of this.
But I want to be careful in case he would watch this. I want to be careful not to cause any issues there, because we all have our own path through life. And all I can do is tell you what it's done for me, and then you have to decide. And I know questions were asked, but they were answered in that way, which the answers his neurologist gave, I took back to to Dr. Berry and another professional, and they both said, no, I don't think that applies to you. But I will say he was right in one respect, because I did have a completely clear brain when I first talked to my brother. And then that lasted probably 6, 8 months, and then it started to come back. But it hasn't affected my large motor
So
skill.
we also haven't been as careful with the elimination diet as we started out.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
that could be the
That could
reason.
add a little to it. Yeah. But I mean, I even before that point, even when we were being strict, noticed the clearness in the brain. The motor skills were just fine. So I don't fear losing my motor skills again. And the older neurologist who has acknowledged that maybe there might come a point where I might not need Botox. He did say the more you move, the better you are. So when I told him I thought it was a little worse last time I saw him because we'd eaten stuff at Christmas, and he said, I don't think it has anything to do with your diet. I think it probably isn't moving as much.
In winter, in the cold.
In winter, you're right. I'm not moving as much, but last winter I wasn't moving as much either, and I cleared up. So, but he's right.
So
Movement's important.
regarding the Botox, is that something you've been able to reduce?
He won't he absolutely will not reduce the amount of drug I get, but he has said go longer. So I'll put it out at least 14 weeks usually. And then he has said, usually I get him at 12. And he would say, if you're on your 12th week, if you're 2 days before, if you're feeling as good as you are today, call and put it out. And I've done that a few times. Now I try to get them to schedule it 14, 15 weeks out. Now, the last time, the excuse was, well, he's not available. He's not available. He's not available. So you got to have it at 12 weeks. That's what's hard because I haven't gone past I think I've gone 15 weeks, which he's very happy with that I could even go that long. And I wasn't bobbing but I was feeling, you could feel the tightness in the neck, but nothing like what I had ever experienced before. So it's a tough one to try and decide what to do because it never fails that the time it comes due, I'm about to have an event that I want to participate in. And I don't want to be bobbing and locked up. And so it's like, okay, how much chance do I take, or do I take this drug just in case? But I will say most of the times I've taken it this year for the first month, which is, it takes 3 days to take effect. And then it works for 4 weeks. At the end of 4 weeks, I'm at the top of my peak and it starts to wear off. And then it's gone by 10 weeks usually. But it has made me worse during those times. And I think it's putting to sleep more than I need put to sleep. And so I'm still I don't know what's best there to do. There may come a time like this next time when I'm due in a few weeks, 2 weeks, week and a half. I'm going to see him again. But then the next time I would be due would be about the time we're taking our cruise, which I will take it because I want to be good for the cruise. But following that, I may see how it goes. I may go ahead and say, I'm not going to do this again until I get locked up.
Yeah, the last couple of times she had said, I'm sorry I took the treatment because I think it hasn't helped, or it gives me a different problem right away, right after receiving it.
But you're in a kind of between a rock and a hard place because insurance, it's very costly. Insurance already makes you through all kinds of hoops just to get it. And I had actually told the doctor if they would ever come and sit in this chair one time and get this done, they'd realize you don't do it for the pleasure of getting this done. You do it for the relief you get. Although the last time it wasn't quite as painful. So that's the hard part. If I let myself get too bad again, I'll be back to that solid rock. And that's where I just don't know. Okay. So it's a journey for me that I'm still trying to figure out.
So also with the insurance, I'm not 100% sure how it works, but like if you decided I don't want the next treatment, does that kind of almost like reset you with the insurance so that you have to reapply for the insurance?
That could be a concern.
Well, they have to, every time they have to request it. I have to be what they call pre-authorized every single time I have it done. Will it put a bigger question mark in the eyes of the insurance company if all of a sudden I go a lot longer than the 14 to 15 weeks that I'm going. I don't know. That's my thing is I don't want to find out that all of a sudden I need treatment. Insurance is now going to deny me because I was able to go X amount of time. And now I have an $8,000 bill because it's more like 8 if I have to pay it myself.
Yeah, as it is, we have over $200 to pay each time she gets the treatment.
Because they work out a deal. The insurance company works out a deal with them, and that lowers it down. Because I remember I asked at one time when this first started, because looked like we were going to be between insurances. I said, "What do I pay if I pay you cash?" And they said this bigger amount, and I said, "But the insurance only has to pay this." Well, they work a deal with us. Yeah, but I'm paying you cash today, and you're going to wait several weeks to a couple of months to get paid by the insurance company, and you won't give me the same deal. No, we won't. So.
Yeah. American healthcare is big business, and that's the reality now. That it has really changed over the decades to what it has become.
And I know my doctor's office has to jump through particular hoops to get me the drug. And I even take the generic of the drug. My brother cannot. He has to take Botox, the
name brand.
The name brand. I can take an off-brand, a generic, and it affects me, or it works for me. He is now getting to the state after 17 plus years that it doesn't work very well for him anymore, and that is a risk. The other risk with Botox is that it can weaken your muscles and make it the muscles just get weaker because they're not being dependent on things, I think. So my younger neurologist, when I saw him, he did ask me, have we done another x-ray on your neck since the original one? I said, I have not. And of course, I wasn't thinking that day. I was just in such happiness for him to see how good I was that I didn't think to say, okay, why should I have to have another x-ray? I've come to understand why he would want another x-ray is because after having so much Botox, you could end up with significant, over time, there is a chance you could get more arthritis in your neck, which would cause a different problem. But I don't think I was to the point where he felt like, oh, we have to do this. He was just asking a question. And I don't intend to pay the money to see him this year because he's the one that provided the oral drug. And I have not taken that since I told you last time I had such a bad reaction with that oral drug. And I didn't feel it helped me, that I was never going to take that again. And he was just so overjoyed with my improvement. And he says, I don't think you're going to have to see me again. And so if I don't, I probably won't see him again. So anyway, that's what it is with Botox.
And overall, we're just happy and thrilled. I mean, carnivore is the way to be for us.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely caused a change in me that I would never have expected to be able to walk independently again without having to have my balance back. That's huge. I don't fear the falls that I used to fear. And it's nice to, like I said, to be able to sit in my camper and be able to pull my legs in. There were times where I absolutely couldn't even lift my legs. He had to lift them up and push me in the camper because I couldn't lift them. And I have all of that back. And I have my friends who think it's a miracle.
That's fantastic. Has anyone said to you, any of your friends gone, oh, I could do with getting a bit healthier, or I could do with losing a bit of weight? What should I do? Has anyone asked?
Yeah, and I did mention we have a couple of friends at our church, and they did try it for a while. I'd like to see them go back into carnivore way of eating. And
I've had a couple ladies from my card class who have altered it for a little while, but never really went full blown into it because I think they need to look at the why of it more. They're still listening to their local doctors. They can see it in me, but I think it's just a scary thought to eat just meat.
Well, and then I've had people say to me, well, I can't give up my vegetables. I love them too much, that brings such variety to the meals and flavor and all the things they love about it. And but my response is always gracious, but I in my mind, I'm thinking, but you don't need that. But you don't need that.
Well, and I just remind them, we were never really taught that meat has vitamins. Nobody ever said that growing up. We were just, we did eat meat heavy diet when I was growing up. A lot of venison, a lot of elk, because my parents had six of us, and my father preferred my mother not work, so it was just a one income family, and so things were, a little tight. So we got our meat by hunting, and what vegetables we would raise them ourselves. So I grew up with kind of that meat heavy diet. Once in a while, I get hungry for a salad, so then we have a salad. We just don't do dressings. We just like blue
We'll put
cheese.
like blue cheese on the salad rather than a dressing.
Most of the time, I don't miss vegetables at all.
And I didn't realize how much seed oil goes into things like dressing. So you are getting that when you don't expect it. It's not like you're cooking with it. But now, if you want that for a little flavor, suddenly it's part of your diet again.
So it's a big step for people, I think, that don't see themselves as unhealthy. They're amazed at the transformation in me, but yet if they look at themselves, they don't really think. I think sometimes a crisis is what causes you to do a little bit more searching. And
Yeah.
most of my friends aren't there.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to hear things are still going well, and you've got the holiday coming up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Paul and Rena, thank you so much for coming back on and sharing this update with us. I really appreciate your time.
It's our pleasure. So many people have said you've got to do a follow-up. So I was thinking about contacting you, and then you beat me to it.
Well, and I think it's good to encourage people that it has made a long lasting change for me, although it's not been a perfect. I still have some of those symptoms, but the bigger skills are better now.